patient named Guernsey, male, middle 70s, was admitted to the hospital complaining of chest pains. He had been referred by a nursing home where the doctor had diagnosed his condition as angina pectoris. Now, it is axiomatic that nursing home doctors are always wrong. The intern who admitted Mr. Guernsey, however, accepted the diagnosis and prescribed morphine, a drug suitable for angina, but not at all suitable for emphysema, which is unfortunately what the old man actually had. Within an hour, the patient became unresponsive and diaphoretic and was raced up to intensive care with an irregular pulse of 150, blood pressure 90/60, respiration rapid and shallow. The resident on duty at intensive care now compounded the blunder by treating the old man for pulmonary edema. He gave him digitalis, diuretics, and oxygen. This restored the old man's color, and he was sent back to his room in the Holly Pavilion, ruddy-complected and peacefully asleep. In point of fact, the patient was in CO2 narcosis and died at 7:30 that evening.
A man comes into this hospital in perfect health, and in the space of 1 week, we chop out one kidney, damage another, reduce him to coma, and damn near kill him.
The Hospital is one of those 1960s, 1970s quality films that again looks at a field, looks at the medical field and its good intentions that crash into the reality of the administration of it by humans.
So he talked a nurse into zapping him on the bed.
One of the girls from hematology he's been running around with.
God, it's a Roman farce.
I thought I heard you out here, Doctor.
Well, these things happen, of course.
I suppose I'd better call the medical examiner.
I still don't understand what happened.
Well, it took us about an hour to get it sorted out. It seems a patient named Guernsey died last night in 806, but that information wasn't given to the night nurses. These things happen. At any rate, according to the Cardex, the patient Guernsey was down for 25 milligrams of Spayrane at Q6H, and Mrs. Reardon sent Nurse Perez to give him his 12 o'clock shot.
I get the drift, Mrs. Christie. In other words, Nurse Perez went in and sedated Dr. Schaefer thinking he was the patient Guernsey. My God, what I don't understand.
May I finish, please, Doctor? After Perez gave him his shot, she noticed the IV was pinched off on the bed. So she reported this back to Mrs. Reardon, who then assigned Nurse Rivers to restart the IV. Now, Rivers was a float. She didn't even know the staff people on the floor. Nobody knew what the patient Guernsey looked like anyway, since he'd only been admitted that morning.
So she plugged an IV.
Yes.
How much?
A liter.
5% glucose solution won't kill anybody. Wasn't dehydrated, was he? Did he have any other ancillary conditions? Didn't anybody bother to go in and check on him during the night, even under the impression that he was merely a patient? Was he hyperosmolar? Did he have a bad heart? He must have had some sort of thrombosis. I want the Fed post done here, Mr. Hitchcock. And you and I had better have a little chat, Mrs. Christie, about your excessive use of float nurses.
I've got nearly 1,000 nurses.
My doctors complain regularly they can't find the same nurse on the same floor 2 days in a row. Now, what in hell am I going to tell this boy Schaefer's parents? That a substitute nurse assassinated him because she couldn't tell the doctors from the patients on the floor? My God! The incompetence here is absolutely radiant. I mean, 2 separate nurses walk into a room and stick needles in a man, and one of those is a number 18 gel coat, tourniquet the poor son of a bitch, anchor the poor son of a bitch's arm with adhesive tape, and it's the wrong poor son of a bitch.
The film shows the ineptitude that can come out, the inefficiencies that can come out, the incompetence that can be bred in it. It walks the viewer through the various personal challenges all humans are susceptible to.
Is he in? I've been having periods of acute depression recently. Last year, 2, 3, goes way back, I suppose. I can remember entertaining suicidal thoughts as a college student. I'm an only child of a lower middle class people. I was the glory of my parents, my son the doctor, you know. I was always top of my class, scholarship to Harvard, boy genius, the brilliant eccentric, terrified of women, clumsy at sports.
I understand you just separated from your wife.
I left her a dozen times. She left me a dozen times. We stayed together through a process of attrition, obviously sadomasochistic dependency. My home was hell. We've got a 23-year-old boy. I threw him out of the house last year. shaggy-haired Maoist. I don't know where he is. Presumably building bombs in basements as an expression of his universal brotherhood. I've got a 17-year-old daughter who's had 2 abortions in 2 years. Got arrested last week at a rock festival for pushing drugs. I let her go. A typical affluent American family.
How serious are your suicidal speculations, Herb?
Well, I amuse myself with different ways of killing myself that don't look like suicide. I wouldn't want to do my family out of the insurance.
That digitalis will give you an arrhythmia.
Good toxologist would find traces. Potassium's much better. 60 milliequivalent, instantaneous. Of course, then you're stuck with how to get rid of the hypodermic. 40 milliequivalent gives you plenty of time to dispose of the evidence.
You seem to have given considerable thought to the matter.
You ought to know when a man who talks about it all the time never does it.
I don't know. I see a man exhausted, emotionally drained, riddled with guilt, and has been systematically stripping himself of wife, children, friends, isolating himself from the world. Are you impotent?
Intermittently.
What does that mean?
It means I haven't tried in so long, I don't know.
It walks the viewer through turmoil of the times, which seem to accompany every single decade.
8 days ago, you showed up half-stoned for a simple nephrectomy, botched it, put the patient in failure, and damn near killed him. Then, pausing only to send in your bill, you flew off on the wings of man to an island of sun in Montego Bay. This is the 3rd time in 2 years we've had to patch up your patients. The other 2 died. You're greedy, unfeeling, inept, indifferent, self-inflating, and unconscionably profitable. Aside from that, I have nothing against you.
The hospital was to do all the killing for me. All I need do is arrange for the doctors to become patients in their own hospital. Found my way to Dr. Ives' laboratory. I crushed him with the sandbag and gave him a massive shot of the digoxin. This, you see, brought on an instant condition of cardiac arrhythmia. I waited for him to come to, and then I brought him down to the emergency room. He had at that time perhaps an hour to live.
Dr. Ives, he's in
Prompt treatment would have saved his life.
A little while ago, he was suddenly taken ill, and I thought I'd better get him over here right away.
As a staff doctor, he was seen without preliminaries. His vital signs were taken. An electrocardiogram which revealed occasional ventricular premature contractions. An intern took his history, and then he was promptly, simply forgotten to death. Mislaid among the broken wrists, the chest pains, the scalp lacerations, the man whose fingers were crushed in a taxi door, the infant with the skin rash, the child swiped by a car, the old lady mugged in the subway, the derelict beaten by sailors, the teenage suicide, the paranoids, drunks, asthmatics, the rapes, the septic abortions, the overdosed addicts, the fractures, infarcts, hemorrhages, concussions, boils, abrasions, the colonic cancers, the cardiac arrests, the whole wounded madhouse of our times. In this way, you see, was it revealed to me the manner of Nurse Campanella's death. She was to die of the great American plague, vestigial identity. So, last night I coshed Miss Campanella with a sandbag and parked her in a corridor of the X-ray department for 5 hours.
Why X-ray?
Well, at X-ray, a sedated body lying around unattended for 5 hours wouldn't seem unusual.
Of course.
Her operation, that is to say, Mrs. Mangiafrani's operation, was not scheduled till 9:30. So at 9:15 this morning, I rang for my nurse.
Rang for your nurse?
To ensure 1 full hour of uninterrupted privacy.
Of course.
I got up, wheeled Miss Campanella off to the operating rooms. I exchanged Mrs. Mangiafrani's bed with hers. I transferred the charts and identity bracelets. She died officially of anesthesia shock.
One, two.